So there's a few negative people in this workspace. Who do you see as positive role models for modern masculinity?
Oh man, there are loads, and I think a lot of them are just normal dudes, you know. There are a couple of guys that I really follow and I like, and I think again, I'll caveat this because it's still highly likely that some of these guys might get in trouble. Do you know what I mean? It can happen, and because I think I said, funny enough, one of my girlfriend's post this morning actually that healthy masculine men are around and there are lots of them, but modern society isn't conducive to producing or supporting men to continue to be positively masculine, right? There are a lot of temptations, there are a lot of structures that just society in general is kind of designed to pull men out of being positively masculine. And I think the higher up the hierarchy that you go, the harder it is to hold on to that, right? The temptations become stronger. So I think actually when looking around for real positive examples of masculinity, you're almost better off just looking in your own environment. Like some of the guys that I know that run blooming boxing academies and stuff like that are just out there. They're not making any money, but they're working all the hours God sends to contribute to their community in a positive way, right? By taking young men that would in that real rambunctious time of life, right, when your balls are dropping and testosterone's flying around and you want to find a pack and you want to go out and do dangerous things like young boys have, and just throughout the history of human time, and that will never cease, right? That young boys, when the testosterone starts pumping, will go out and do dangerous things. They will form in packs. They will go out and cause trouble, right? And so the men that are helping to make sure that those young men don't go out and destroy their own lives and destroy the lives of other people in their community, that for me is a really powerful image of what an elder masculine man can do. And I do, but I think it gets harder and harder, and especially in this age where things get taken out of context, where everything is being filmed, everything is being snippeted and TikToked, right? I mean, even on my social media, like, it's just so hard to have a whole rounded conversation, right? In today's world, it's just so difficult to do that. And actually, in order to get people's attention, you have to throw out little snippets, right? And then people can accuse you of not, a bit like what you just said about Jordan Peterson omitting stuff. And it's not even because of a desire to omit stuff. It's maybe potentially just to lead a conversation or create a conversation. Like with every social media post, with every TikTok, with every video, you can't provide all of the answers and all of the angles. It's just not possible. But it's very easy to take one of those out of context. And like, again, some of my content can be massively taken out of context. People do. They just jump on the ones that trigger them and create a sense of who I am as a man, because some of the stuff and the way that they've perceived what I'm saying, right? And so it's difficult. It's difficult to hold on to that pure positivity in this world. It just is, especially with a masculine thread running through it, because so much of it is deemed as bad, especially if it's a man doing it. You know, if men are doing one thing, like sort of succeeding and building and growing and stuff like that, it can, like, and being competitive, it can be perceived as dangerous. We even look at boxing, right? It's something that gets condemned as a bad sport, but as soon as a woman starts doing it and doing well at it, she's heroed for doing well in a masculine sport, and that somehow isn't as bad. I don't know. It's a very confusing time. It's a confusing time out there for men.
I think a lot of it is this, like you say, you've mentioned quite a few times about how we're tribally driven, but we don't live in tribes. And like young people, male or female, are psychologically designed when they hit sexual maturity to lose all respect for their parents until they hit around about 25, when they start
their brains start working properly. Like it takes a village to raise a child, right?
Yeah.
This is a thing, and our tribes now are getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and we're trying to make them individual now. We're trying to separate people into literally just being individuals. Not even the family unit is under attack at the moment, you know, or under threat. So it's difficult. I kind of want to talk about a couple of kind of positive men. I don't know. They're just and it's funny how some of them have fallen, because like when I was a kid, somebody like Bill Cosby, right, was, you know, when I was a kid, I used to watch the Cosby Show, and that dude was such a positive role model for me growing up. And then to have that kind of pulled away, and the truth of it, somebody else I follow somebody like The Rock, for instance, Dwayne Johnson. I think he's quite a. I think one of the things we've got to caveat it with is there is no such person as the perfect person, right? And I think that's a real important part. And I think actually a really important part of positive masculinity, right, of a healthy male, is owning that part that we're not perfect, right? We see our shadow parts. We see our parts that aren't operating how we'd like to. We accept them, acknowledge them, work on them, perhaps. You know, so I think it could easily be said that The Rock is a workaholic, let's say, you know, which isn't perfect, right? But his energy for me is very positive and masculine. Like he gets stuff done. He provides he creates stuff that he believes is positive. So that's another thing, right? I can disagree with him and being involved in Hollywood and the pros and cons of them in some of the movies he creates and whether they're having a general, but he believes they are, right? And that's the most important thing. They're in line with his integrity, right? He believes he's producing stuff that's having a net positive effect on society. And I think someone like him really is, you know. You see the way he interacts with women, both in his shows and in real life with his partner and with his daughters and stuff like that. I think somebody like that is a really healthy example of a guy. He's also quite connected with his emotions, right? He talks about stuff in a real way. Whenever I watched him being interviews, I'm always like, yeah, this guy's pretty candid and pretty open and pretty vulnerable as well. Not in a cheesy way, like just doing it for the likes. I think he's pretty genuine when he does it.
Oh no, I think anybody who's an actor or in that kind of level, I've worked in that industry and around it. Yeah. You know, the thing about Hollywood is it all happens in Burbank, which isn't technically Hollywood. Yeah. But when you spend time anywhere around there, there's a kind of energy of desperation and of, I wouldn't say narcissism because it's one of those words thrown around.
Yeah, we do throw it around.
But there's an energy of, I'm just going to call it desperation because that's what it mostly is.
It's a requirement for validation, right?
I don't think anybody who's involved in that industry, especially not people who are successful, get there without having a certain level of willingness to sacrifice other people as cannon fodder to get them to where they need to be. And as much as I see what you say about The Rock, and I respect the work ethic and everything else he's done, I have no doubt he is definitely shat on people and done some
without doubt
to get there.
Right.
But so that's why I'm always a bit cautious of putting people up. Like
and
that
exactly, which is why I said in the first place, right? Looking for famous people or people that everybody will know as a shining example of positive masculinity is a hard job, right? It is a hard job, and actually we're better off looking at grassroots levels. For people that are going to be really living in that integrity a lot more, because it's easier to do. They said the temptations as you get and what it takes to get there in and of itself. Like I said, the system is designed to pull us out of that integrity. It's designed to do that. You can't make it to that without having been an asshole, without shitting on people, without pulling yourself out of integrity at times. Now what we see is, can you get to the top and put it back together again, and then use that? Can you make the juice worth the squeeze, right? Can you make those bad things? Can you counteract that by the good that you do when you get there?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. So let's talk about a car crash then. What do you think went wrong with Will Smith?
Jesus, do you know what, man?
Because he was seen as quite a positive role model. and quite a positive masculine presence for quite a while,
He was.
and now not maybe so much.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why either. He made a big boo-boo. Man, but I want to slap Chris Rock too. And then again, I think there's a difference in personality type here. For me, and this is something me and you will wholly disagree on probably, I am much more of a slapper, right? I'm much more likely to punch you in the face or slap you than I am to emotionally tear you to shreds with using words, right? I've got way more respect for somebody who's going to come and punch me in the face than for somebody who's going to strip me down with his words. And that's a personal choice. That's a personality thing, I believe. We can move on to how we perceive violence and combat, men fighting each other and using physicality towards each other to do damage. We can discuss.
Oh no, we'll
that.
get into that.
We're going to. I have no doubt that we're coming up to that. But because of my background, I really appreciate the simplicity of just getting a slap, like, you know. And I've had them, and I've deserved them, and I've taken them, and I've swallowed them, and I'm really appreciative of that. But actually, if I look back at the people that have really hurt me and that have done damage to me, and that I kind of don't have much respect or like for, it's the Chris Rocks of the world. Like, and I don't even find him funny either. Like, I've never been a fan of him, because I find when we talk about people looking for that external validation and that neediness and that desperation, I think comedians are a real prime example of that, right? Laugh at me, look at me, like, and I don't connect with that at all. And you know, I'm a master coach of NLP. I understand the power of words, and people who like go, oh, it's only words, he only said something, people shouldn't, like, you can say whatever you want, freedom of speech. Like, I believe you can have freedom of speech, but I also want freedom of violence. Do you know what I mean?
I think
Within, there has to be levels of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the consequences of using some words should be a slap. I think actually, as Mike Tyson said, also a very complex human being who I have quite a lot of respect for now, is that, you know, people are far too comfortable sat behind their screens, like being able to say stuff without the risk of getting punched in the face. Like, well, how I grew up, you had to be careful, man. You know, that risk of a punch in the face was real, and some people didn't care about that and were prepared to get those consequences. I think we all probably were. We used to do and say bad stuff, but I think actually the world is probably a better place when that threat is still palpable and real. And I think when we get to a place where you can just get away with saying anything to anybody, right, then I think humans are going to be in a worse place for that, man. And that's debatable, and I'm ready to have that debate. But so in that instance, I'm Team Will, right? Having said that, Will Smith has got a whole load of other stuff going on with his wife and the open relationships and the way that I'm also very fascinated by. But that is such a painful place, you know, that stuff, the conversations that he's had and the way that he has maintained that relationship with Jada must be such a raw thing. And Chris Rock knew that. He knew that yes, okay, he puts himself out there, and his this is the problem with being famous, right? If you put it out there, you've got to be prepared to and I think that's slightly unfair again, because what we're doing is we're going to teach famous people that they just better stay shut up, right? We better not see anything real about them. And so actually I think something, we can say it was narcissistic or requiring attention or requiring external validation. Like, why were they putting all of their relationship out there? All we can say, actually, here was two quite famous people living their relationship and putting it all on show for all of us to learn and experience from, right? Those red table discussions that they had, some of them really powerful, useful, interesting, real dialogue was going on there. And like, I don't care who you are or how narcissistic you are or how much in need of thing, like, putting that out there requires vulnerability at its highest level. And I think for that to be exploited and particularly at an event like the Oscars or something like that, which is about the prestige and the premium of it, to slice through that, I think, is a pussy move, and he deserved a slap.
Minor defence of Chris Rock, I would say that he made a joke about her silly haircut.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't actually dig at them about anything to do with their relationship or the stuff that he put on TV. He made a silly joke that vaguely referenced her haircut. He laughed at that joke, genuinely laughed, looked at his wife and then went, "Oh, I'm in the shit." And then when it did...
Well, that's an interpretation of what happened. That's one interpretation of what happened, and I think it's easy to, when you just see... I mean, you know, you take the shots, right? You know, you can tell.
The camera comes to him and he's laughing his ass off. 5 seconds later, he's walking
But
on stage.
I've been there.
Yeah.
I've definitely been there, where I've heard something, and actually in a moment, I was like, and then my brain has caught up. We were talking earlier on about men in the right brain and the left brain, and actually it takes a little time for us to swap from one to the other, right? He might have well been in right brain logic at that point, which is, I'm at the Oscars, there's a comedian, he's cracked a joke, everybody's laughing, I'm just going to be part of this, and we're going to laugh, and all of that. And then he's clocked the impact that it's had on his wife, right? Oh, hang on a minute, this has an emotional impact on somebody that I love and that I care about. It's also therefore going to impact my marriage, my relationship, and another part of me. No. And you're allowed to take a moment to transition from those two things. You're absolutely allowed to do that. Right? We're allowed to be sat there and then to catch ourselves. As I said, humans aren't infallible. We're allowed to go, oh shit, maybe I shouldn't have said that. I've probably said a couple of things that have come out of my mouth, even this afternoon. I've gone, maybe that's come out the wrong way. Or maybe I shouldn't have said it like that. For sure, I've used words incorrectly. And I've laughed at inappropriate things as well that I've afterwards gone about and gone, actually, that wasn't funny.
Calling yourself a slapper was probably an interesting one.
Yes.
No, I mean, that's the thing, I think that there's humour that is maybe on the edge, that is that. But have you watched the Chris Rock special that he did?
I have, and I didn't find it funny at all.
This is what I think is that the stuff he said in that retroactively earned him the slap that he got.
For sure.
And because then he did dig into their personal stuff and into her life and into, he took some nastily low blows there. But on stage, all he did was make a haircut.
And he had done some stuff beforehand.
Oh, I don't know.
So he'd done some, this was, again, we can take this
out of context.
This situation wasn't just all in that moment. There were lots of little bits of how it got there. Yeah. So as with all human interactions, I mean, what? Again, it's a symptom, right? Yeah. What must have been that cocktail of ingredients that drove a man like Will Smith to, in that situation, to walk up and slap Chris Rock? We can't just look at that and go, oh man, he just couldn't take a joke. There's obviously so much more to it that would take somebody with that level of experience of showbiz, and he's spent his entire life, all of the level, possibly one of the most famous, powerful men in that world, right? Will Smith is A+ lister, right? He knows how to behave in those environments, right? That is his jungle. And yet something happened there, a cocktail of stuff, emotional. And I think this is the important thing. People are human beings, and it is so easy for men especially to get pulled out of our integrity in any one moment, and nowadays for it to have a light shone on it and for us to be totally castigated because of it.
Okay, so steering this into a similar subject then, because I just wanted to bring up Will Smith. I think
I'm Team Will, man. That's the full stop.
That's fine. I'm actually Team neither. I have no skin in the game. So it's just, I know it's a good one to kind of bring up, like you said, subject of spotlights. How do you quantify violence in that context of consensual violence like boxing?
Yeah, I think I really struggle with it even being called violence, to be fair. I asked that question on my social media the other day, is boxing violence? And it's difficult to say that it's not, right? Using dictionary, this, that and the other. But anybody that's involved with it really doesn't feel that in the same way. And I think there is something, so not all men all women or humans are built the same, right? There are some people with a greater capacity and propensity to engage in physical altercations, right, with each other. There are people that enjoy it, like me, and there are people that really don't, right? And there are people that don't have a capacity for it, either physically or mentally or emotionally. And I think a lot of times when I've worked with guys who've come on one of those 8-week boxing things and stuff like that, almost one of their biggest fears isn't about getting hit, it's about actually hitting the other person in that controlled way whilst not being angry, right? How do you engage in violence without the aggression and the anger and the reason, right, to what, like that bit that made you snap? How do you do that? And I think in there is where the magic really is, and the real useful part, especially in the modern world, because man, young men and men and a lot of young women have that within them. It's, if you want to go back to chimpanzees or whatever, they're not all people, and I think trying to expunge that out of humanity is impossible. But what we're doing with it is we're shaming it and we're driving it underground, right? And I think that's far more dangerous than accepting that we have this shadow part. We actually, the way we're designed, look, our biology and our neurology and all of that hasn't changed for 3.5 million years or whatever, right? We're still the same. We're still designed to be wandering around in tribes of 40, hunting and gathering and fighting each other, right? To survive. We're still designed to do that. And like accepting that shadow part of ourselves, if that's what it can even be called, and learning how to master it and finding healthy outlets for that in a consensual way is a net positive in the world. Again, the society and the structure now poisons all of that. You know, you've only got to look at the way that boxing is now. And probably always has been, you know, well, certainly for the last 40 or 50 years. As soon as money gets involved and it becomes a sport, it gets poisoned. But you look at grassroots level at what it does for young men, you know, who find this outlet and this place where they can put their competitive spirit, and it's just a beautiful thing. Getting in a ring with your mates, right, and punching each other in the face in a way that is like I'll bring my best to my sparring partner, right? For me to show respect to him, I'm going to bring you what I've got. I'm going to bring all of my skills. I'm going to bring all of my forethought. I'm not going to hit you. It's never 100% in sparring. Do you know what I mean? But I'm going to operate at my best in order to allow you to operate at your best, or for you to push yourself and raise yourself to a higher level. Right? Physically, mentally, emotionally, all of those things. And it has 100% got nothing to do with me disliking you and wanting to harm you. You may get harmed in the process. And it's difficult to explain, but that's not what I'm trying to do. That's not what I want to do. I admit, it's very difficult to explain, and it may not make sense for people who haven't participated in it. Yeah, I'm trying to knock you out. But I'm not, but I'm also not trying to hurt you. Like, does that make sense? What I'm doing is I'm bringing my A game in this very epitome, like the real hard line of humanity, which is why we still want to watch it. Of course, humans love it because it's that hard line of humanity where we're still connected to that animalistic element of who we are. And I think part of the problem of humans is that we have this arrogance that we're not animals, that we're past all of those things. Right? And that is arrogance at its extreme, human arrogance at its extreme. Right? Our biology, right, and our human, that animal element, and for me there's 3 parts of being a human. There's the biological part, or the animalistic part, primitive part. There's a spiritual element, right? And then there's our cerebral part, right? Our brain and our capacity for logic and thought and imagination and all of that. But all too often we prize these other 2 parts, right? And spiritual people think it's more important than logical people, and logical people think that's more important than spiritualism. But either way, both of those 2 elements go, but we're not animals, right? We shouldn't be having sex. We shouldn't be fighting. We shouldn't be doing all of these things that are really inherent to who we are, man. I think exploring that in a healthy way is powerful.
Yeah.
and it can lead to some real. It's probably saved my life, and it's saved millions of young men's lives and their potential victims as well, if that stuff had been left unchecked and untrained.